it did not give me the numbers.
Oh, but it's on?
Yeah.
Are we there? Hey, everybody. Hi, everybody. It's Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV with Ian Paice from Deep Purple.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm remarkably well.
Good, and that is remarkable to hear, because next year is a huge year. Not that there's anything to minimize this year, we'll get to that, but next year two big things happen. One is you turn 70, and it's the 50th year of Deep Purple.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the first thing, other than job security, what's the first thing you think of when you reflect on 50 years of that?
Well, it's the sort of thing that everybody else does and we don't. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody have to remind me, even next year, somebody will have to remind me that it's that date.
Right. Because you're just going about your business, right?
Yeah, and sure, when you think about it, it's remarkable. You know, if a band gets 5 years together with success, that's amazing. If you get a decade, it's almost unheard of. There's only a few bands that have actually managed to get through this sort of time and still be here. You know, Stones is an obvious choice. Yeah. The Who, to a certain extent, are still around. Mm-hmm. But it's very, very hard to pick out other bands that still function over this many years. So it is, you know, against the odds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's also, and this is a conversation my wife and I have all the time about music, it's also just as remarkable that there's some bands, a handful or so, that are not together anymore, like Led Zeppelin is an obvious one, whose music has still lived on since the 60s. And we always ask ourselves, is there any music coming out now or that has come out in the last 5 years that will last 30 or 40 years? I know that's hard to prognosticate, but the first thing that comes to mind is no.
Because, I've heard nothing.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is, it's not that everything's been done, but certainly when you guys came out and through the 70s and beyond, it was groundbreaking. And I think that's partly what's exceptional about your longevity, is that when you put out a new record like Infinity, that's out now, it still has that same groundbreaking sound. Not to say it's dated, but it still is what it is. You haven't morphed into something completely different. You know?
No, why would you change what you are for the sake of what may be fashionable?
Right.
Fashions come and go. Trends come and go. Quality and individuality doesn't.
Right.
That stays there forever. And if you are that, be that. Mm-hmm. Don't try and be this. That's just nonsense. But the trouble with rock music, especially, it's been dumbed down. You know, with very few exceptions, there's no young Jeff Beck out there. There's no young John Bonham. There's no young Robert Plant. There's no Jethro Tull type band. There's no Hendrix. There's nothing there that is individual. What you have is this: everything is coalesced down to one sort of sound, and it just gets a bit tedious. And all the chord changes are the same. You've heard them 100 times before, and they just get boring. Yeah. And that's because the need to be a virtuoso is no longer important.
Right.
And unless you strive to be that, then you won't learn all the things that's in the music you're trying to play. Mm-hmm. And that's why bands like us and the great bands from that period of rock and roll could do different things. We actually had more strings to our bow when it came to playing. Doesn't mean say we were physically better. We just had a bigger canvas to paint on.
Right, exactly. And I think we're given much more latitude. I think a lot of what you said is dumbed down and driven possibly by the record companies and the radio stations as well.
Maybe so, but at the end of the day, the kids are in control of what they're prepared to do, what they're prepared to accept being told to do. At the end of the day, you've got to make your own mind up. Do I want to be the best I can be, or shall I just get by? Mm-hmm. Now, for a lot of kids, silly, a lot of young musicians, they're doing the best they can. Yeah. In my generation's time, we had a lot of guys doing the best they could. The fact that it wasn't quite good enough against the competition they had made the difference. Now that competition just isn't there. So all these guys are doing the best they can. And I say with very few exceptions. Because the cream is always there if you look for it. You know, every generation has you know, a few guys, a few women who are just special and can do it. But what's being given to the public now is all very samey, and practically anybody who's been playing an instrument for 1 or 2 years could do what these guys are doing. And ultimately, it's boring. There's no individual spark to it. And if it continues like that, it'll be the death of rock and roll as we know it. Because when our generation do stop playing it, there's nothing to fill the void.
And carry the torch.
Well, they won't be good enough.
Yeah.
They won't be good enough to do what our guys did.
Yeah.
Because the musical knowledge that they can call on isn't big enough.
Right. I have seen, and I personally know some players that play music and play in bands or for artists that put out the kind of music that you're referring to. And outside of that, they are amazing players.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a different genre. Like I see some guys that play basic 4/4 pop or rock, and then I see them at a clinic or a club, and they're playing amazing freeform jazz, like from the 50s. It's incredible.
I'm saying they're there, but what people are being given.
Exactly.
That's why your earlier question, will it stand the test of time? Unless there's some depth there, unless it's something you can remember, one tune against another tune, it won't be there. You know, that it's disposable.
Yeah. Too interchangeable, predictable. Yeah.
You know, I keep saying there are always good guys and good women out there, musically, you know, totally adept. And the ones who stick to their guns are almost like fighting against the stream. The current's going against them, because what you say, well, it's a record company, they want it all to sound that way, and you can understand how a band may be trying guts out for 2 or 3 years, get nowhere, and they say, well, if we'll do what everybody else does. Yeah. And then they get some success, and they'll go, well, maybe we were justified. But it is, you know, it's stagnant to me. I can only, you know, voice the way I feel about it. And you may get some kids writing and say, you're talking a load of nonsense. It's my right to speak my nonsense. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Your nonsense is welcome here on Drum Talk TV, which is a lot of nonsense. But I hope that possibly the way today's business is changing a little bit with the self-publishing, and it's easier for musicians and bands and artists to put out their own material and distribute it themselves, that maybe there's going to be a shift where more artistic work will come out and more stretching will come out.
I hope so. But it will come down to the kids saying, look, I want to do this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we did a tour last year with a really great band called Rival Sons.
Yeah, yeah.
And they play some really good now rock and roll. But individually, they can do that other stuff you're talking about. You know, there's far more actually inside them than they put on stage, and what they put on stage is very good. So there is this glorious exception to the rule, which does give you that flicker of hope. Yeah. I mean, there are some people out there still trying to do it.
That's awesome. You know, I want to shift and talk about the new album, Infinity, which, by the way, I love the artwork and the whole motif of it.
Very nice.
And I'm one of those old-fashioned guys who, I want the physical CD. I went to 3 places and they were sold out. I still don't have it. I was hoping to bring it to you, have you sign it, but I have heard, you know, the tunes online. Yeah. What was it about working with Bob Ezrin that made this album so special?
Well, when we did the Now What record in 2012, that was the first time we met Bob, and we got on very, very well. He's a taskmaster in the studio, but that's his job. His job is to get us to get the performance as quickly and as freshly as we can. And he makes sure you do that. You don't go fiddling around on take 20, you know. Yeah. Just take 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe take 5 if you're having you haven't quite found what's in the song. Because when you got a new song, you don't actually know it. So you only know it 6 months later. Anyway, he makes sure you don't fiddle around and waste time trying to get something that you're not going to find. And we had a great deal of fun. The record itself, not so much here, but around the world, was very successful. Mm-hmm. And we just said when we left each other, let's do this again. And when the time came to make another record, it was an obvious choice. Bob was free and happy to do it, and we did exactly the same process, same studio, same rehearsal setup, same writing periods, and just came up with some ideas that we thought were interesting. Mm-hmm. And going back in the studio, it was almost like the 4 years between the two records that never existed.
That's cool.
And again, it was very, very fast. I mean, when we did the Now What record, all my stuff and drum tracks were done in 10 days. And when we did Infinite, 7 days.
Wow.
You know, 10, 11 tracks in 7 days. Yeah. And that's really nice because, you don't want to be spending 3 days over one drum track. Yeah. I mean, by the time you've got it right, it's wrong.
Right, yeah.
By the time you've got it perfect, it's lost all sense of spontaneity and excitement. Yeah. So, you need to get it in 15, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And with a bit of encouragement from Bob and a little direction. So don't do that, try this, He'll suggest something which is in your arsenal, but you haven't maybe thought of using. So you're still playing you. He just said, look, do that thing you do, that thing you do, not that thing you do that thing. And you just go, oh yeah, that would work. Sometimes it's, not seeing the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
He's the other side of the control room and he sees all the trees.
He has the objectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was a great deal of fun. I say for me the process was very quick. Mm-hmm. And that's usually when you make a good record. When you spend days and days and days, weeks, months, it's usually not a very good record.
Yeah, overworked, almost.
Well, especially when you're trying to catch a live performance. If you're going to try and make a Sgt. Pepper or a Pet Sounds or a Tommy,
yeah, then
obviously that takes a little longer because you're creating a studio vehicle.
Right.
When you're trying to create something which is it has a possibility to be played on stage, mm-hmm. So you just want a really good live performance with new bits of music, that has to be captured fresh. And if it is, that comes through on, I was going to say on the grooves, yeah. But it comes through on the laser.
Yeah. And vinyl's coming back, which is really cool.
We've actually sold, I think, as many vinyl copies as we've sold CDs around the world.
Oh, that's awesome.
And as you say, with the artwork being so pleasing, yeah. it looks even better on a 12-inch vinyl copy.
Where was that artwork shot?
Well, the idea of the front stuff, the front cover, was all record companies. Ah. They just wanted this, the infinite thing or infinite, whichever one you say, is something which is endless. And the wastes of sort of Antarctica are sort of like that.
Yeah.
But when we did all the shots inside, that was done in Hamburg on a river estuary in the winter, and we did this photo shoot there, and we got all this 19th century or early 20th century Arctic clothing, and believe me, it don't keep you warm.
Really?
Unbelievable. There's piles and piles of this stuff on. Everybody looks like they weigh about 400 pounds, and it's still freezing your ass off there.
That's funny.
But there's this river estuary going into Hamburg in Germany, and it's got some white beaches there, and you don't see anything on the other side. And so with a bit of clever camera work and clever exposure, it was made to look like the Arctic or Antarctic West.
That's cool.
But we were really cold that day, and we had somebody bring 6 husky dogs in to complete the thing. And then we did some shots on a river tug. Mm-hmm. We had some artificial snow brought down, and again, it all sort of fits together, and it really looks like we're somewhere.
It does.
Exactly, sort of wildernessy.
Yeah, and I love how granular they got with this one detail. Blew my mind. If you go to the Deep Purple website and you click on the music to pull up this album, normally on your PC you see the little wheel turn. Yeah. Instead, it's the infinity sign. It blew my mind. It was so cool to see every little detail tied in.
Ear Music, our record company, they've got some very creative young people there, and they were very, very instrumental in a lot of what you see in the visuals promoting the record. I mean, we can't even think the titles for albums. Generally, if somebody comes up with a better title than we do, and they usually do, we use theirs. Because everybody comes up with either a song title or something that has no relation that we can understand.
Right.
So somebody on the outside would say, well, how about this? And we go, brilliant, that'll do.
That's
You don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
That's it. No, I can get back to doing what I do.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. You mentioned, when you're in the studio capturing live performance sound. To me, as a lifelong Deep Purple fan, that's been one of the essence of what has made you guys who you've always been. It's a live performing band,
Yeah.
and it's I've never heard a Deep Purple album that sounds like, oh, that was overproduced or that's too compressed. It has that live sound.
Well, some are better than others, and some have a unique charm. I mean, Machine Head has a unique charm because it's so close mic'd.
Right.
The sound is so right there, 2 or 3 inches in front of your face. And it wasn't the way we meant it to be. We recorded 2 great big ambience tracks, and when we were doing the mixes, we forgot they were there. It's only when we did the remix at 25 years after the first release, that sounds good. But because you're now so indoctrinated with the sound of the original record, even though I think it makes the album more exciting, it's not what you expect anymore, because you expect that in your face sound.
Right.
So that was,
The album Perfect Strangers, I thought, was real refreshing sound-wise as well. It was your first album in the 80s, and by that time, it sounds funny to say that now. I mean, the 80s were so long ago, but the 80s, some new technologies were happening and everything like that, and I think Roger did a great job of making that album sound big and fat and like you're in the room with the guys.
Right. Again, when we recorded that, it wasn't under ideal conditions, but it was the conditions that we actually set ourselves. We were still very, very frightened of being stuck in a studio with a dead sound and trying to recreate the liveness electronically. So we ended up with a mobile unit again in a basement making music. And so what we got out of it is pretty remarkable. But when we got Mr. Ezra involved, he said, I know the studio for you. Now, had he not suggested the tracking room in Nashville, we wouldn't have even known it was there. So, big, old-fashioned studio, great sound. No fiddling around with the drums. You set them up, you go bang. Yeah? You do bang again. Bang. Okay, got that. Bass drum. Bang. Bang. Got that.
That's great.
15 minutes later, you're recording. The sound is in the room, and if you don't have a room that has sound, you have to spend ages trying to get something that works from the microphone and will work for your ear. Because you can do things from a microphone, but you can listen to it. Oh, I don't like it. And quite honestly, if I don't like it, I can't play it.
Right.
If the drum goes duh, and I want to go bang, then I can't play a drum that goes duh.
Right.
I mean, there are some guys who love really dead studio drums. Simon Kirk was free. He used to kill the way he liked them. So in the studio situation, it was perfect. Yeah. I went to certain studios like one hit of the drums, and I knew it would just be rubbish. Yeah. Because that's not what I need to work with. Right. I mean, we're all different. We all have different things that work for us. But
yeah, absolutely.
For me, it's got to have some semblance of power and the reverberation, just the things that make drums work.
The tone and the resonance has always been part of your sound. Yeah. What would you recommend? I was going to say new drummers, but I think this is appropriate for all drummers. What would you recommend to new drummers to help them learn how to find their sound? Whatever the hell that means. I mean, I know that can mean a lot of different things,
it's a good question.
I think it's important too. So not everyone sounds the same.
Well,
or sounds like crap.
There's some great sounds there, but you say so many guys are going for the same sound. If that's what you like, there's nothing more to be said. It's down to personal choice. Drums are the only instrument that have no defined tuning.
Right.
It's up to what you like. You got a violin, it's G, D, A, E. That's it. No leeway, and it better be right. With drums, you want them low and boomy. You can do it. You want to tight and hard. There's no what makes you happy. But when you get a situation where everybody's going for one sound, then it does 2 things. The first thing it does is nobody knows who's playing. You can't differentiate the sound.
Exactly.
And the other thing, because they're using the same sound, they're actually learning from the same book. So the same fills are coming out, the same way of approaching rhythms coming out. And again, the individuality of the player is getting lost.
Right, exactly.
Now, you could have put 5 different records on from bands of my generation. I could tell you, that's Ringo. Or I could say, that's Bonzo. That's Ginger Baker. That's Mitch Mitchell.
Right.
They all had a different style, and they all had a different sound.
Yeah.
And they all had different chops.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why we remember them all.
Yeah. And I think that was a big part of what shaped the music then, is because everyone had their own sound, and the sound was more than just tone, resonance, and tuning.
Yeah.
It was chops and the style and the different groove. You know, Mitch Mitchell bring more of a jazz flair to it. You certainly brought your jazz influences into your music.
But because the influences of the players themselves came from different spheres of music.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if you weren't playing when you were a kid, you were listening to certain things that other kids weren't listening to.
Right.
So there is a difference there. But when you've got a generation which is maybe only going back 30 or 40 years from the way drums have been played, that ain't far enough.
Right.
You've got to go back to from the moment they had a cylinder going around like this and trying to record something.
Yeah.
Okay, that's maybe going a bit too far. But you've got to go back to the time when records went like that and broke. Acetates, the 78s. Some of those guys that were creating what we now know as popular music had some wonderful things going.
Yeah.
Things that we've forgotten, things we don't know how to do, things that we have to relearn. And so if you go back that far, and not just in jazz, but as silly as it sounds, in country music, in military music, there's stuff going on rhythmically, and you can learn from it. And if the more you've got, the bigger that picture gets for you to start filling in and do different things with. But just going back 1-2 generations just ain't enough.
Absolutely. Recently, when was this? In last December, January, I don't remember, we bought a 1924 Victrola.
Right.
And we got like 3 dozen 78s with it. They weigh a pound.
Oh, yeah. And
they're
be
great.
careful.
Yeah. And
you got
and I love that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like Guy Lombardo and stuff like that. And you're right. There's things you hear in that someone, even my age in their 50s might hear in the drumming and the music and not realize that it actually came from way back then. They hear it somewhere else in modern music, but have no idea the roots of it.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
But, to find the great grandson of this film.
Right.
That's
exactly.
great. That's great. But how did it evolve to that?
Right.
And is it better than that was? And maybe it wasn't.
So then, you're right. Where did the intro to Pictures from Home come from?
I've used the idea a couple of times. That is to try and misdirect the listener from the actual tempo that the song is. Mm-hmm. And a very simple way is usually to use a 3-against-2 pulse. Mm-hmm. Ba, 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 ba. So if I'm giving that 3-2, 3 feel against what is basically a 4/4 bar, then when the rhythm does come in, it's a slight, that's where it is.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind it. So it was setting it up without giving the game away.
Yeah, that's great. I love the intro to that. Oh, I can't tell you how many times as a kid I lifted the needle, put it back to really understand what I think I was hearing.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be difficult. It just has to be interesting.
Yeah.
And we did another song. I don't even know it was ever released here. It's called No One Came, and it starts on the upbeat. Instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 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 it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 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 and you got 4 bars of that.
Oh wow!
So when it comes in, it's the wrong way round.
Yeah.
You start tapping like it's the on bit, and it's not.
I love that.
So just misdirection,
Yeah. The fill-in strange kind of woman that you do is sort of that same thing. It almost stutters the whole groove in a way.
Yeah. But you can have fun rhythmically, and you don't have to be Buddy Rich. You don't have to be a whiz kid. You just use your brain and come up with something interesting.
Be creative.
And if there's nothing there, there's nothing you can do about it. But if there's a little spark, and you go, well, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Then do it.
I think that most musicians who play whatever kind of music they play, the fans and the people who, you know, learn from their playing and whatnot figure that that's the kind of music that they immerse themselves into. Like everyone in Iron Maiden must listen to heavy metal, right?
Yeah.
Is there any music you enjoy listening to that might surprise people that think that way?
No, the only music I don't listen to is opera. I can't stand it. But I love tunes.
Oh,
I hate
interesting.
being sung at.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I feel like. I mean, you know, if I'm listening to some Sinatra, I'm not being sung at. I'm part of the whole thing.
Right.
If it's Fitzgerald or even if it's Bob Dylan or what, I'm part of it. But opera, I just don't, you know, beautiful melodies ruined by singing.
Yeah.
That's my failing, I understand. Don't shoot me. I just don't get it. I don't like it. I can't understand a word they're saying anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go, do you mind if we see if we can take maybe a couple questions from the audience?
We'll
that's
try.
watching? Okay. Do we have any questions for Ian from the audience? Or is everyone so numb and stunned from all these great stories that they don't have anything?
Just lots of comments. Yes, great to see you, Ian.
Thank you.
Lots of stuff like that. You've been my inspiration since I started drumming, and to thank you for that. Lots of comments, but no questions.
Okay, just we'll
That's all right.
we'll give them.
I don't need to answer a comment. I just need to say thank you, usually, unless it's a rotten one. And get out of here.
Well, then I have just one last question in parting.
Okay.
Have you guys looked far enough ahead to sort of start to plan possibly something for the year 2018 in celebration of the 50-year legacy?
I don't know whether we're going to do anything outrageous on that. This tour we're on at the moment is called the Long Goodbye Tour. And that doesn't mean to say it does that when it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
But this is probably the last time we will do a major world tour, which is going to take as long as it takes.
Yeah.
You know,
There's a lot of places to
if
go.
it goes into 2019, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for us in the moment, 2018 is just another year, but I'm sure there'll be somebody suggests we do something,
Yeah.
and it just depends whether it fits in with everything else that we say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
But even when this tour's over, whenever that day is, we still leave because none of us have said it's the last finish, and just letting people know that it cannot go on forever. I think we have something here.
Yeah.
What do we have?
From Igor, and hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. What is your favorite new band?
Favorite new band? At the moment, I've got
Deep Purple.
I've got two young bands I really like. I mentioned one earlier, Rising Suns, who are incredibly good. And there's a band from Britain called Temperance Movement, who are also very good. Great singers, both of them. Playing interesting young rock and roll. That's it. That's the only two I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really a good question.
Okay, and one more
Yeah.
Okay.
from Ivan.
Yeah.
What motivates you musically after all these years, and how do you look after yourself to prevent injuries?
The motivation you don't need. You know, I got my first drum kit when I was 15 years old, and I'd been belting furniture and my bed with a pair of magnet needles for three years before that. And so I was doing it because I liked it. It made me happy. I was having fun. It still makes me happy. I have something that most of the world don't have. I have the ability to please myself and earn a living doing it. You know, my life has been really, really good to me, and drumming has made that happen. So I don't need to get excited about it. I have a ball every night. Some nights it's a better ball than other balls. But I still like the way drums sound. I still like the feel of the stick coming off it. So I don't need motivation for that. Keeping myself in trim for playing. That gets harder as you get older. You know, there's things I used to do when I was 21 years old, which were really physically easy. To be honest, some of those things are not physically easy anymore. They take a lot more. Your body doesn't replenish oxygen the same way it does when you're knocking 70 years old. So you find more efficient ways to do it. You find better ways, more efficient ways to conserve the energy you have. and you actually learn to play better. You know, I see old footage of me with a stick coming down from here, whacking hell out the drum, and I realised if I did that as opposed to that, with the same volume, and I used a third the energy. Now, maybe it doesn't look quite so good, but at the end of the day, you know, when your hand's in the air, you're not actually making any noise. It's only when it comes down and hits the drum that it sort of becomes important.
Right.
So you find different ways of doing it as your body changes, and as the physical side changes from, you know, from being a young man to becoming slightly more elderly, you just find a more efficient way of doing it. And sometimes I look at my playing now, and I think I should look like I'm doing more. When I listen to it, I'm still doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just looks a bit too easy, and it's not easy. But sometimes that's the way it looks.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the way you change with the limitations of your body. So you just find better ways of doing stuff to enable you to keep doing it longer.
Awesome. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
And Ian, thank you so much
Thank
for
you, Dan.
taking time. I know you just got to town, just got to your room.
Pleasure, Dan. No problem.
Appreciate it. And we'd love to do this again, even if it's on Skype from the comfort of your own home.
Rightio.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching on Facebook Live on the Drum Talk TV page. And thank you, everybody, for watching on drumtalktv.com. See you soon.
Bye-bye.